Let's be adults about this. That was the subject line. Not a farewell, not a phone call, just 3 cold sentences in an email, the digital tombstone of a 13-year marriage. My name is Nathan Briggs. I'm 42. A staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne Division. I've jumped from planes in pitch-black skies, patrolled hostile territory, and watched brothers fall in the sand beside me. But nothing prepared me for the moment. My marriage ended in a PDF. It was a regular morning in Kandahar, if any day in a war zone can be called that. The desert sun hadn't even crested the horizon when I checked my laptop in the mess tent. There it was, an email from Becky, my wife of over a decade. Short, efficient. The kind of message you'd send to a colleague, not someone who held your heart through 4 deployments. She said it was over. She'd filed the paperwork, moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our home in Spokane, and she'd already cleared out our joint bank account. I read it twice, then a third time. Closed the laptop, took a cold shower, got dressed, didn't say a word. That's the thing about soldiers. We're trained to compartmentalize. You get your orders, you follow through. But that day, something hollow settled in my chest. Back at my bunk, I replied with one word: understood. That was it. No arguing, no begging, no threats. Because I'd seen enough of life to know that when someone shows you who they are, you listen, you believe them, and you plan. My bunk mate. Wilson looked up from his dog-eared paperback. "You good man?" he asked. I nodded. "Just stuff back home." He didn't press. In the military, we respect silence as much as we do orders, but the truth, I wasn't blindsided. Not really. At this point in the video, pause for commentary. Many veterans will recognize the emotional detachment here. The stoicism isn't bravado, it's survival. The mission doesn't stop because your world collapses. Divorce during deployment is tragically common. There's even a dark military slang term, Jody, the guy back home who takes your girl. What's unique about Nathan isn't that he was betrayed. It's how methodically he responded. He didn't explode. He planned. Nathan flashes back to signs he ignored. The subtle distance, new clothes, a password change here, a girls' night that turned into a weekend, and crucially his own quiet preparations made not out of paranoia but instinct. It started with small things, always does. 6 months before deployment, Becky stopped asking about my day. Our conversations became transactional. What time will you be home? Did you pick up the dog food? There was no warmth, no spark, just static. Then came the gym membership, new clothes nights out with friends I'd never met, passwords changed on her phone. That last one hit different. I never confronted her. That's not how I was raised. My father taught me that confrontation without certainty is just noise. I needed to be sure. So I paid attention not just to her, but to my gut, and I started making moves of my own. Quiet ones. I rented a small storage unit across town, moved our important documents there, birth certificates, our marriage license, the deed to the house. It was under my name only thanks to the VA loan, and I intended to keep it that way. I packed away my grandfather's watch and the silverware my mom left me when she passed. The things that mattered. I also opened a separate bank account at a credit union she didn't use and started funneling a small portion of each paycheck there. Nothing noticeable. Just enough that if something happened, I wouldn't be starting from zero. The night before deployment, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her voice was flat, her eyes dry. It felt like I was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a wife. Let's pause again. Nathan's reaction, making legal and financial preparations without confrontation, isn't paranoia, it's foresight. In relationships, especially long-distance or military ones, emotional intuition becomes survival instinct. If you feel you're walking on glass and start making quiet exits in your mind, it's already over. The only difference is whether you act on it or let someone else write your ending. Fast forward 2 weeks into deployment. Nathan's phone buzzes during a lunch break in the mess hall, a bank app notification, another withdrawal, then another. By the time he logs in, over $88,000 is gone. Years of savings evaporated. The account now shows $22.37. That's when reality stops whispering and starts screaming. The moment I saw the account balance $22.37, I didn't feel rage. Not immediately. I felt cold. The $47,000 we'd saved in our joint account, gone transferred piece by piece while I was eating MREs and ducking mortar fire in Kandahar. Becky hadn't just left, she'd looted the ship before jumping overboard. I stepped out of the mess hall, the weight of it settling in Murphy. One of the guys from my unit looked up. "Bad news." "Nah," I said, forcing a neutral tone. "Just some account stuff." That night, I called the bank using one of the communal base phones. The woman on the line confirmed it. Transfers had been happening in small amounts for weeks starting the day after I deployed, then larger ones. The last transfer, a lump sum to a new account I didn't recognize. I hung up and stood in the hallway while soldiers laughed and called home. It felt like watching a movie I wasn't in anymore, a scene of normalcy I no longer belonged to. That's when Wilson found me again. "Heard you looked like you saw a ghost," he said. I told him the truth. My wife emptied our accounts, sent divorce papers, moved her boyfriend into our house. He didn't flinch. "What's your plan?" "I don't know." "Yet?" He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." This part cuts deep, not because of what happened, but because of how it happened. Financial betrayal is often more devastating than emotional infidelity. It erases not just trust, but security. What stands out here is how calm Nathan remains. That's what makes his story so gripping. He doesn't retaliate with emotion. He responds with intention. And this is where the arc turns from personal pain to strategic revenge. Nathan logs into the home security system. He still has remote access. On his screen, a stranger. Jeremy walking his dog, drinking from his Seahawks mug, laughing with Becky in the kitchen he renovated. It's no longer betrayal, it's occupation. And in that moment, Nathan's military training kicks in, not rage, not grief, mission planning. I stared at the security feed on my laptop. Jeremy, the boyfriend, was settling into my life like he'd paid for it. Walking my dog, wearing my clothes, standing in the kitchen I'd retiled during my last leave, and Becky. She looked happy. That was the moment something inside me clicked. It wasn't fury, it wasn't sadness, it was focus. I pulled out my phone and started a list. Call James, Army buddy turned lawyer. Check VA loan terms. Review refinance documents. Becky had mentioned something about them last year. Lock down my pension accounts. Request emergency leave quiet discreet. Buy Aero 500s. My plan was already in motion. This wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability, and I wasn't going to scream or post rants online. I was going to dismantle their scheme the same way I'd handle any military op, step by the book. With overwhelming precision, I emailed James with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." He replied an hour later, "Call me secure line only." Let's pause here for analysis. Most people, when betrayed, either shut down or explode. Nathan does neither. He becomes something rarer, a strategist. This is the real turning point in the story. Nathan shifts from victim to operator, from reaction to initiative. His quiet actions, contacting a lawyer, reviewing documents, checking financial records, aren't dramatic, but they're the bedrock of real justice. 2 months later, Nathan is stateside. He doesn't tell Becky he's home, doesn't show up at the door. No confrontation. Instead, he checks into a motel under a false name. Then he meets James at a diner 10 miles out of town. James slides a folder across the table. Bank statements, loan documents, and one critical piece of evidence. A forged signature on a refinance application. Nathan's name, except it wasn't quite right. Wrong middle initial, wrong slant close, but not his. Becky had forged his name to refinance their home and pull out $330,000 in equity and made Jeremy her co-applicant. Nathan sips his coffee. She forged my signature, stole our money, moved in her boyfriend, tried to sell our house. He leans back. Busy woman. The next morning I drove past the house. Our house, Jeremy's truck, was gone. Becky's car sat in the driveway like nothing had changed. But everything had. I didn't knock, didn't need to. The mission wasn't emotional anymore. It was tactical. Instead, I drove to the bank that handled the refinance, walked in wearing my uniform, VA ID in hand, met with the loan officer who'd approved it. I laid out the documents, my real signature on my military ID, my driver's license, then the forgery Becky had submitted. The loan officer turned pale. I need to report this immediately. I understand, I said calmly. Already filed a police report. Later that day, I filed paperwork at the county clerk's office to contest the refinance based on fraud. I also submitted a notice of interest which legally barred any property transactions on the house without my involvement. That evening, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called. If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. Those same words from the email, no response. Then came the twist. Jeremy was arrested. He'd been driving my truck still in my name, got pulled over for a suspended license related to 2 prior DUIs. Police found prescription pads in the glove box stolen from the dental office where Becky worked, already filled out. The investigation wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. It was veering into criminal enterprise. At this point, the story takes a larger scope. Nathan's pain becomes purpose. He's not just defending himself. He's exposing a system. Becky and Jeremy weren't just cheating spouses. They were part of a scheme possibly targeting deployed military families that elevates it from betrayal to predation. This isn't just a personal vendetta. It's the start of a federal case. Nathan meets with a bank investigator named Thompson. He confirms the refinance funds are partially gone, $14,600 already withdrawn, transferred to a man named Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy, someone new. Nathan calls James. An hour later, Spencer's a real estate agent, specializes in cash deals, has a history with Jeremy. They've closed 3 low-value home sales together. Becky wasn't just running away with a new man. She was part of a prepackaged scheme. And Nathan. He was about to become the whistleblower who breaks it wide open. I sat on a park bench in downtown Spokane, the folder of documents heavy in my hands. Photos, transfer records forged, signatures, bank activity, all pointing to one truth. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a coordinated operation, and I wasn't the first victim. I called James again. I want to go further. I said he didn't ask why. He already knew. I've contacted the FBI. He said they're investigating Jeremy Ryan and Daniel Spencer already. Your case might be the one that cracks it open. That night, I got a text from Becky. Nathan, please call me. The bank said something about fraud. Jeremy got arrested. I don't understand what's happening. I replied with one sentence, who is Daniel Spencer? She started typing, stopped, typed again, stopped. Finally, I don't know what you're talking about. I sent another message, $14, $600 house listing multiple transfers. 10 minutes of silence. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off the phone. The next day, James and I waited across the street from the house. Becky had texted again, asking to meet at Riverfront Park. Don't go. James warned. I won't, I said, but I want to see what she does while she thinks I'm not home. At 9:45 a.m., Becky left the house. 10 minutes later, a car pulled up with a real estate logo. Daniel Spencer stepped out. Jeremy came to greet him. They shook hands, went inside. Should we follow? James asked. No need, I said, unlocking my phone. Remember those cameras I'd installed? They were still active, still uploading to cloud storage. I opened the live feed. Spencer and Jeremy were walking through my home like realtors hosting an open house. Spencer took photos. Jeremy pointed at fixtures. We'll list at $470K. Expect a $420K cash offer by the end of the week. Spencer said, "What about the husband? Becky says he's causing trouble." "Military guys are all the same," Spencer scoffed. "They make noise, then disappear. He'll settle." James was already recording it all on his phone. I forwarded the footage to FBI agent Patel with a simple note, "Happening now." 30 minutes later, unmarked SUVs rolled up FBI. Spencer and Jeremy were led out in cuffs, boxes of documents carried from my house. Jeremy looked confused. Spencer looked furious. Agent Patel called, "We got them on tape. Wire fraud conspiracy attempt to sell under false pretenses. The whole thing." Then she added, "Your wife just arrived. She's on the lawn watching." I looked down the block. Becky was standing there, stunned, hand over her mouth, as her world unraveled. "What happens to her?" I asked. "Depends," Agent Patel said, "on what she knew and on what you want." This was the climax of the operation. Not with gunfire, but with facts, evidence, and strategy. Nathan didn't yell, threaten, or post a rant. He documented, verified, and waited for the moment to act. It's a modern form of revenge, not emotional, but judicial. And because he kept his composure, others, possibly dozens of military families, would be protected. Jeremy Ryan and Daniel Spencer were booked that afternoon. The charges piled up: wire fraud, identity theft, real estate conspiracy, VA loan violations. Spencer had priors. Jeremy had a pattern. Becky. She claimed ignorance. Said Jeremy had told her I was hiding money, that I planned to leave her with nothing, that the refinance was his idea, and she'd just signed what he told her to. Maybe she believed that, maybe she didn't. Didn't matter anymore. Through James, we negotiated. Becky signed a formal confession admitting to the forgery. She agreed to full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, a no-contest divorce, no alimony, no settlement. In return, I didn't press criminal charges, not because she didn't deserve them, but because I didn't want to spend one more year entangled in her consequences. 6 months after the email from Kandahar, the divorce was finalized. A clean break. On the day I signed the last document, I got a call from Agent Patel. Jeremy was sentenced today. 8 years, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. Spencer got 12. She hesitated. There's more. Your case helped us uncover 11 other military families targeted by this scam. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing it. I didn't intend to become anyone's hero. I just wanted what was mine, but justice. That was a damn good bonus. Let's pause for reflection. Nathan's restraint is what made this possible. If he'd lashed out even once, it could have jeopardized the entire investigation. Becky's story is a cautionary tale, too. Whether she was a pawn or a player, she let herself become part of something criminal. The line between victim and accomplice is often drawn in silence. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about systems, financial, legal, marital, and how vulnerable they are when someone thinks no one's watching. A year later, Nathan sells the house. Too many ghosts. He moves to a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana, 10 acres, no neighbors, a creek. He retires early from the Army after 20 years of service, gets a dog, starts building furniture for locals, lives quietly off the grid. One day a letter arrives from a woman in Texas. Her husband, a Navy officer, had almost been scammed by the same crew. She wrote, "You don't know me, but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to walk away." Nathan pins it to his fridge. On the days when the silence feels like too much, he reads it, and he remembers that sometimes the quiet fight is the one that changes everything.